Hello and welcome to marketing91.com. Objectives of ethics. Standards for life. Ethics establishes moral standards for life and sets norms of acceptable behavior. Fairness and judging actions. Ethics guides the application of fair judgment on human behavior based on standards and norms. Accuracy. It suggests accuracy with respect to moral behavior. It recommends do's and don'ts. Truthfulness. It truly depicts opinion or attitude related to human conduct. Impartiality and equality. Impartiality refers to decision making on the basis of objective criteria and without bias or prejudice. Equality implies treating everyone the same irrespective of any differences. And lastly, public accountability. Ethics guides one to be accountable as well as manage the accountability of others. Ethics and law. Law refers to rules enforced through systems and do not necessarily involve ethical conduct. The law may permit something that would be ethically wrong. Ethics represents a system of internal controls, whereas law represents a system of external controls. Ethics is generally unwritten and voluntary, whereas law is purposefully written and enforced by the state. Ethics is guided by moral principles, whereas law is guided by reality principles. No behavior can be ethics neutral. However, some behaviors may not have laws to govern them. Ethics helps fill the gaps in law. They supplement and complement each other. Let's look at the differences between ethics and morals. Ethics relates to moral duties and obligations. Morals relate to principles of right and wrong. It is derived from Greek word ethos, meaning character. Character is a personal attribute. It is derived from Latin word mos, meaning customs. Custom is an attribute of a group or a society. Ethical principles are accepted because they arise from personally accepted principles. Morals are accepted because they arise from a religious or cultural authority. It is wider in scope because it examines the moral standards of a group or society to determine whether these standards are reasonable or not in concrete situations. Morals are narrower in scope than ethics because it addresses the human need for belonging and emulation. Ethical norms are comparatively abstract. They cannot be described in general rules and statements. Moral norms are usually expressed as general rules and statements. Ethical principles are gradually adopted by an individual by making reasonable decisions in appropriate situations. Morals are typically adopted in one's childhood from family, friends, school, religion, etc. Evolution of ethics. Views of ethical behavior. Utilitarian view. Ethical behavior is that which delivers the greatest good to the greatest number of people. Individualism view. Ethical behavior is that which best serves long-term self-interests. Moral rights view. Ethical behavior is that which respects and protects the fundamental rights of all individuals. And lastly, the justice view. Ethical behavior is that which involves impartial and fair treatment to all the people according to legal rules and standards. Ethical relativism. It is also referred to as situational ethics. It states that there are no universal principles of ethics and that right and wrong must be determined by each individual or group. Ethical subjectivism. It argues that what is ethically right or wrong for the individual depends on the ethical principles he or she has chosen to follow. Ethical absolutism. It is the ethical belief that there are absolute standards against which moral questions can be judged and that certain actions can be termed right or wrong, regardless of the context of the act. Classification of ethics. Descriptive ethics. It is the scientific study of moral beliefs and practices that describes how people behave and think when dealing with moral issues and arguments. Normative ethics. It is the study of principles, rules, and theories that guide our actions and judgments to determine what is morally right or wrong. And applied ethics. It is the branch of ethics which involves the analysis of specific, controversial moral issues. Various schools of thoughts in ethics. Ethical altruism. It is an ethical principle which states that individuals have a moral obligation to help, serve and benefit others, even if it involves sacrifice in one's self-interest if necessary. Ethical egoism. It is a moral doctrine which states that everyone ought to act to promote his or her own interests exclusively. Contemporary ethics. It states that the concept of ethics is not stationary but keeps evolving with time. And lastly, contextual ethics. Ethics depends on prevailing circumstances. Cognitive ethics. It is a meta-ethical view which states that moral judgments require the representation of the truth and that emotions influence decision-making. Virtue ethics. It emphasizes the role of one's character and virtues for evaluating ethical behavior. Utilitarian ethics. It determines morality on the basis of the greatest good for the greatest number of people principle. Contract ethics. It is an ancient philosophical idea which states that an individual's ethical and political obligations are related to an agreement he has with every other individual within the society. And lastly, moral ethics. It is a culture-dependent approach to ethical behavior. Ethical and supportive practices at Microsoft. Microsoft and its employees donate over $1 billion annually to charities and non-profit organizations. Further, Microsoft's management and employees have decided to tackle the shortage of IT professionals in the US through the TEALS program. Through the TEALS program, Microsoft employees are encouraged to teach computer science at local schools and motivate them to enter the technology industry. Microsoft employees, in addition to being amongst the highest paid employees in the US, also enjoy several perks such as 100% coverage on their healthcare premiums. Thank you.